So I've talked on evil, I've talked on peace, we've heard about story and meaning. Today I'm talking on creativity. And I feel like I've got some creds in this area. I've written over 100 songs. I've completed 2 books, a novel, and the Cliff Notes on the Science of Mind textbook. Get it? Cliff Notes? It's used in over 40 centers around the U.S. in classes and stuff. I've sold out 2 printings and still waiting to raise the cash for a 3rd printing. But in the meantime, anybody interested can get it on Kindle from Amazon. I've written, produced, and directed and edited over 40 short films. And so I feel like I've got some creds around this. I've also created 4 marriages and 3 divorces, 6 near-death experiences, and being fired from a job over 60 times. We are creating every minute of every day, every single one of us. We're either doing it consciously or unconsciously. And when we do it unconsciously, bizarre things happen. My dad married my mom. He was living in Manhattan at the time in New York City. Had a son, me. 2 years later, had another son. Moved to the Bronx. 3 years after that, had a daughter. And shortly thereafter, divorced my mom. He moved back to Manhattan. A little while later, he married another woman. They had a son. 2 years later, had another son. Moved to the Bronx. 3 years later, had a daughter. And shortly after that, got divorced. Bizarre things happen when we don't do things consciously. I asked him about it, and he said, yeah, he finally noticed that he was doing this unconsciously. And his 3rd round, he married a woman, moved to Connecticut, didn't have any more kids, and they stayed married the rest of their days. So the idea is to get conscious around the fact that we're creating anyway. Since we're creating, we might as well do it consciously, yes? Okay. So the first step in creating consciously is by taking responsibility for our creations. Because if we don't take responsibility for it, we've given our power away. And we don't want to do that, right? But I understand that it can be really hard to take responsibility for some of the creations that have come upon your life. You know, there's no way I created this. In fact, when I was a music director back in Asheville, I was auditioning drummers. And one day a drummer comes into audition and asks, well, what do you believe in this place? And I said, well, what we believe here is that we are responsible for the creation of our lives. And he looked at me in horror and said, there's no way I'm taking responsibility for my life, and ran out of there like the place was on fire. And so some of you may feel that way about some of the creations in your life. There's no way I'm taking responsibility for that. But the second you do that, you give your power away, and then you don't have the ability to create what comes next. Because you've just given your power away. So that's the first step. Recognizing that, we can either create unconsciously or consciously. And if we want to create consciously, taking responsibility for that. And let me be clear about my definition of responsibility, okay? My definition of responsibility is how you respond to this moment right here and now. And now. And now. That when I hear people say, I take responsibility for something that already happened, what they're really saying is I'm to blame. I'll take the blame for that. And blame is not the same as responsibility. Because the only thing we can be responsible for is this moment right here, right now. We can make amends for something in this moment right here, right now for what happened in the past. We can do that. But the only moment we can fully take responsibility for is this moment happening right here and right now. And some of the things that come up around responsibility and creation, particularly when it comes to the creation in our lives, comes down to cause and effect. Cause and effect. People are always wanting to know what caused this? What caused this? And I'm here to share with you that every single effect is like a finished painting. And you're trying to figure out which brushstroke made it. Hundreds, thousands of brushstrokes go into a painting, go into every single effect. As much as you think you're tying it to this one thing, that isn't actually what happened. I'll give you an example. And this is not a true story. This is just me sharing an example. Imagine I'm in this bar. I know that must be hard for some of you to imagine. And I'm sharing with the person I'm with how incredible my wife is. And all of a sudden, some guy comes up and punches me in the face, and I have a black eye. Now, you could say the cause of that black eye is him punching me in the face. It's right there. It's right in front of you. I'm sure you've had situations in your life where the cause was right there. That must be it. But I'm here to tell you no. Imagine that guy just had a blow-up fight with his wife, and the last thing he wanted to hear was some other guy talking about how great his wife is. Imagine all the things that went into play that I wound up in that bar at that exact moment that he showed up. That I'm sharing about how great my wife is because I've had 3 before that didn't turn out so good. All those things went into me wanting to share this about. You see what I'm saying here? I could keep going. I could give you a myriad of different causes that went into that moment. But when we think this moment's it, when we focus on that, we're lost in a maze. Even if it seems we're so certain that that was the cause. So the idea here is to not worry about cause. It doesn't even matter. What matters is what we're doing now. What responsibility are we going to take in this moment to shift, since the effect is either what we wanted it to turn out to be or not? I just started taking painting classes. And I can assure you that the results I'm getting in my paintings is not what I'm looking for. So what it takes is you got to keep practicing, right? So you have this canvas that has this painting on it that either you love, because it gave you exactly what you wanted, with all those strokes, brush strokes that got you there, all those different steps you took, all those different moments of responsibility you took to create that painting that was incredible. Or you're looking at something going, I'm not hanging that on my wall. And so, I've heard people say, my past is dead. I'm not looking back at that. And I say, no. All those brushstrokes you already took led you here, to this moment, to now. And to keep using the same analogy, once the paint's dry, you can actually paint right over it. You don't got to get a new canvas. And in fact, if you use the same one, you keep working it. You never have to stop. You can work that same canvas for years and years and years. People do spiritual mind treatment, right? And sometimes things show up right away. And sometimes it takes a while. And it all has to do with, well, what brush strokes were you using before you did that treatment? What have you been saying to yourself? Do you say to yourself stuff like, I'm a loser, I'm useless, I can't get anything done? And you know, I've heard people talk about that kind of thing and then relate it back to, well, that's what my parents did to me. Am I the only one here who's ever said that? It's how my parents treated me is the way I am. Really? I'm the only one? Yes. And that may have been one brushstroke, but then you took it on and continued those strokes until it became a habit. And now you have a habit. You have a habit that has nothing to do with the original brushstroke because there's been so many you put on to create the effects you're getting. And so now you need new brushstrokes. So you start telling yourself, actually, no, I'm great. I'm a good person. I'm creating the life of my dreams. My life works. If you hear yourself saying something, this doesn't work, go, wait a minute, somehow this does, and it's leading me to where I want to go. And then all of a sudden you're creating brushstrokes that are really different. Oh, I don't like that color there. I don't like the way I did the sun, which is really true in this last picture I did. And so okay, let's see what I can do to make it look like what I want. I'm not there yet. It takes time. This is skill that's developed, right? We're all working on developing a skill of creativity that is happening every moment of every day anyway. So working on the skill is what allows us to continue to build those brushstrokes towards what it is we actually want. And I have found, my experiences, that there are two basic brushes we're using for all these brushstrokes. Our ego and our soul's intention. And when we're using our ego, sometimes we can create some really great pictures anyway. With sentences like, thoughts like, never, never, ever give up. Push, give 110%. You can create great stuff with that. I had my first chance. I finally got to an Oilers game. Went with Kevin. Loved it. It was a great game, right? They were playing the Las Vegas Knights, who won the Stanley Cup last year. And so in the first period, the score ended with the Oilers up. They were winning. And the Knights did not look like Stanley Cup champions. They were very sluggish. They really were not out there doing their best. Well, whatever that coach said in between periods, the Knights came out a very different team in the second period. They started looking like the champions they were. And I guarantee you what that coach was saying to them was making their egos jump. Right? He was doing one or two things. He was telling them how crappy they were playing, or he was telling them that they are magnificent and they can rise. But either way, what he was doing was going after their egos to push them. And they came out and they were brilliant. But the Oilers were no slouches. They rose. And so you had these two teams really battling it out. They battled it out for the next two periods to where it wound up being decided at a sudden death, where the Oilers won the game. I mean, it was killer, right? It was so much fun. So the ego has this ability to rise, to be the brush that's making the strokes, that create all this. Here's what the ego can't do: bring you peace. Because the ego always wants more. They won that game. I am sure after they celebrated for 5 minutes in the locker room, the next thing the coach says is, let's get ready for next week. Right? And that's what we do in our lives. We have these successes, and then what we want is the next success and the next success. And if you're feeling that way, if you are in a place of not being satisfied with where you are right here and now, you are using the brush of your ego and not your soul's intention. When we use the brush of our soul's intention, we still can create magnificently. You've heard, I did a talk on Wu Wei, no forcing, right? You still get to create, but you do it from a place of peace. Like I was talking about last week. And it is incredible when we let go. The thing that the ego wants is to say, this is how it has to be. I'm not going to be happy till I achieve this. Or if I achieve this, it's going to happen this way. The soul's intention goes, there's just no telling how it's going to show up. Open to possibility. Trust. Be peaceful in the knowing. Artists experience this when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's this download of whatever it is they're working on, whether it be a song or a book, whatever. You know, and it's just, oh my God, it's like it came from some other place. And all of a sudden, you're just the person listening and following instructions. And then every artist I've ever met wonders how they can do that more often, and that's their ego doing the wondering. Our ego believes in reason. Our ego believes in logic. Let's be reasonable. But the soul's intention says, open the possibility beyond your reason. There is a way of being in the world that has a magnificence to it, a peaceful magnificence, a way of being in each moment that goes beyond the urgency that many of us live with in our daily lives. If we are urgent and it's not life and death, it's because you're not trusting. It's because you're forcing yourself to be in a way that you don't need to be to get the results you want, but you think you do. Do you know what I'm saying? Do you get this idea that what we have here is something larger to breathe into, to be with? The true creativity of life comes from the brush of the soul's intention. Because it's satisfied every moment of every day and yet continues to grow and expand. It doesn't need to push. It doesn't need to rush. It's never urgent. And there is no doubt. The most beautiful part of what I've noticed in my own life is how little doubt I have these days. And it pops up. I'm human. The ego. And we don't want to get rid of the ego, right? The ego is way too much fun just to get rid of. So this isn't about getting rid of the ego, but it's, again, the ego makes an incredible servant. It makes a horrible master. It is the ego that drives you crazy. It is the soul's intention that can bring you peace. After Joseph's class in February, I'm going to be doing a 4-week class on how to get more in touch with your soul's intention. How to let that be the guide. Because it has no doubt. That trust, that lack of doubt, It is an amazing way to live. And I know for each and every one of you the possibility of living that way. It's extraordinary. And I want it for all of you. Thank you. I love you.